So following the release of No Time to Die, Daniel Craig has now starred in 5 James Bond films, and with No Time to Die coming out this year after its long delays, I thought now was about time that I not only discuss No Time to Die and my thoughts on the film, but also where it ranks among Daniel Craig's other films within his tenure as James Bond. It's quite an interesting journey because out of all the James Bond films and all the actors who have played James Bond before, none of the others have had quite the story that Daniel Craig has had within this character. Obviously, they have all been fairly contained, fairly standalone stories, whereas Daniel Craig's films are all kind of one run-on story. So I thought this is kind of a good time just to finally discuss my thoughts on No Time to Die and just talk about Daniel Craig's tenure as James Bond as a whole. So starting off at number 5, at the bottom of my list is Spectre, directed by Sam Mendes. Now, I rewatched all of the Daniel Craig films leading up to No Time to Die, so these films are pretty fresh in my mind. And Spectre was a film that, when it came out, I remember watching it when it came out in the cinema, I remember quite enjoying it. I remember not really particularly agreeing with a lot of the criticisms towards the film. I kind of felt like people were being a bit too harsh on it, and I thought, it's a decent film. But rewatching it, while I still enjoyed it, like I still had a decent enough time with it, I did find out of all 5 of the films, this is by far the most boring and most slow-paced of them all. And that led to a lot of moments in the film where I was left kind of zoned out and a bit bored, in all honesty. I think Spectre has some good elements to it. I do like the fact that with Daniel Craig's tenure as Bond, it's kind of his sort of origin and his growth into the James Bond that we kind of know from the other films. I do enjoy that Spectre kind of brings those kind of cliches and those elements kind of slowly back in, but it doesn't necessarily mesh as well as I think they hoped it would, given the fact that Daniel Craig's interpretation of Bond is kind of so drastically different from the likes of like Connery and Roger Moore, that those cliches, while they work with those actors, they don't necessarily work too well with Daniel Craig and his interpretation. And also I feel like, bringing Spectre back into it and really leading in with them, it just felt really kind of one and done already, because in Quantum of Solace they obviously gave us Quantum, and Quantum is basically Spectre, but then they did Spectre in this movie and it was just Quantum again, but bigger. And then obviously we do get Christoph Waltz as Blofeld, who granted is fantastic in the role. He plays a great villain. He's just not a particularly interesting villain. Like Blofeld, it's kind of this thing where he's brought into the film and it's like, oh, it's Blofeld, he's back, we've all been waiting for this, blah, blah, blah. But they do this strange reveal with Blofeld where he's kind of this kind of brother of James Bond of his past, and it just doesn't work for me. And even though there are other elements of the film that I do enjoy, like I do enjoy the locations and stuff like that, I also really enjoy the kind of MI6 regulars you get in the film. I think characters like Q, Moneypenny, and also Ray Fiennes, who's now M in this film, I think that they all work together really well, and I think they're really starting to find their stride within this film, which then leads into No Time to Die. I just think that Spectre overall, it's just a bit of a weak film, and out of all of the Daniel Craig films, which I, on the whole, really quite enjoyed, this was the only one of his tenure where I wasn't completely into the film the entire way through. Quantum of Solace has had a little bit of a resurgence in recent years. Obviously, coming out back in 2008, this film wasn't exactly the most well-revered or well-regarded James Bond film. A lot of people kind of felt about Quantum of Solace how a lot of people feel about Spectre now. And I have to say, on the rewatch of Quantum of Solace, I quite enjoyed it. I think, given the fact that this film, went through what it did with the writer's strike and stuff like that, and mixed that with the fact it was directed by Mark Forster, it's definitely a weird mishmash of a Bond film. There's definitely a lot of elements at play, there's a lot of ideas going on, there's a lot of things that don't necessarily work with the film. But what I think really helps Quantum of Solace and puts it above Spectre for me is the fact that it's only an hour and 40 minutes. If this film was sort of 2.5 hours like the other James Bond films, and the other Daniel Craig James Bond films, I think it could have actually been below Spectre. But because it is only an hour and 40, it puts it above it for me, because it's like that. The movie speeds through. It goes by like an absolute, like a bullet, as Mark Forster would say. The movie was fast like a bullet. And even with that, I think Quantum of Solace does serve as a nice epilogue to Casino Royale. I think if you do watch them back to back, which I did, they do serve as a nice 1 and 2 piece. It kind of feels like a nice little addendum to Casino Royale. And I feel like a lot of the action sequences you get in Quantum of Solace, while they're maybe not the best edited, they're still fairly exciting action sequences. Like the car chase at the beginning, it would have been better had we been able to see the shots a bit better, but it's still a pretty cool and exciting action sequence. I also really enjoy the kind of desert landscape you get in Quantum, because it's a very iconic kind of look and kind of iconic location for Daniel Craig's tenure, I think. Particularly, that poster of him with the SMG walking throughout the desert. Like, that's a pretty iconic shot for me. So I do enjoy Quantum of Solace, and again, I think them bringing in Quantum was a really cool idea, because in Spectre, they just did it again, and it didn't feel particularly good or original because they did it in Quantum of Solace, and I actually think they kind of handle it better in Quantum than they did in Spectre. And of course, this film does kind of fully introduce us properly to Mr. White, who becomes such an integral character for the rest of Daniel Craig's tenure. So I do feel like Quantum of Solace has a lot of really great stuff in it, and I think it has kind of been overlooked over the years, because yeah, it's not the best Bond film. It's got a lot of issues, just due to the writer's strike and stuff like that. But I think in comparison to a film like Spectre, the film just flies by, and it just makes it so much more entertaining and so much better to get through. And I think Daniel Craig is really good in this one as well. I think he really kind of is starting to find his footing as Bond, particularly as the character starts to find his footing in the world a lot more as well. So I think that Quantum of Solace, it's kind of overlooked. And I think upon a rewatch, I think a lot of people are starting to discover, and I think you will discover as well if you rewatch it, it's actually not too bad. So smack bang in the middle is the latest film, No Time to Die. No Time to Die, I really think is such a bold direction for the series. It's such a bold step and such a bold take, but also a really fantastic send-off to Daniel Craig as James Bond. I feel like this film really does have a sense of finality to it. It really does have a sense of high stakes to it. Especially when you are introducing things like the family dynamic and obviously where the film ends. There's a lot of really great stuff with it that makes it feel like this is the final chapter of this story. And as I said in the beginning, unlike the other Daniel Craig or unlike the other James Bond films, the Daniel Craig films are one continuous story. And I feel like No Time to Die really benefits from that. I think had the stories not played out that way and they were all standalone, I think No Time to Die, being the film that it is, wouldn't work. I think, but because it is playing off all these other elements from all 4 previous films and kind of ties everything together into this final piece, it really feels like the cherry on the top for Daniel Craig's tenure. And, obviously, kind of full spoilers ahead for No Time to Die. I feel like, the death of James Bond at the end is such a kind of wild and interesting thing to do, because, they've never killed Bond before. So to kind of do that at the end, it was definitely a bold choice for them to go ahead and do that. I also think that Rami Malek as the villain, he wasn't in it enough for my liking, but I do quite enjoy his role within it when he's there. I just feel like particularly the opening scene with Safin, where he is going after Madeleine Swan and he kills Madeleine's mother, really great scene, and you can kind of see Cary Fukunaga's roots in horror kind of within that opening scene, and I think that opening scene in itself is really, really strong. And on top of that, I think the action sequences throughout the film are some of the highlights of Daniel Craig's tenure, particularly the car chase in the beginning with the DB5 is really great, and also the staircase sequence in the island at the end is a real highlight for Daniel. I just think No Time to Die, it really feels like it's a well-oiled machine by this point, because I feel like that's kind of been the point with Daniel Craig's films. They have been Bond, finding his way in the world and kind of becoming the James Bond that we know. And I think by the time we get to No Time to Die, he has become that character, and I think it really works as the final film. It's almost a shame in a way that it is his final film, because everything does feel like it's come together so well, particularly with him as the character and also the MI6 cast as well. It's all a really strong, compelling cast. But at the same time, it also really works that it does come together properly for this final film. And I just think it's a beautiful send-off for his character. And I think, given the fact that Daniel Craig, he is the longest-serving James Bond, I think, in terms of years in the role. He isn't in terms of films, but in terms of years in the role, I think he is the longest-serving. It's going to give him such a big and bold and bombastic and also beautiful send-off. is really good. I do feel like the film is a bit too long. I don't feel like it's perfect. I do feel like the film does go on a little bit too long, and also the death at the end, while I don't hate it or anything, it did feel a bit kind of like they almost felt obligated to kill him at the end, which I thought was a bit weird, because I feel like, yeah, there were reasons why he should have died, but also at the end I feel like they could have probably come up with something to kind of keep him alive. I feel like he kind of almost gives up at the end, but again, I also think that almost is fitting with his character, so I'm kind of mixed on the death, but it's a really great film on the whole, and I think it's a fantastic send-off to Daniel Craig's tenure as James Bond, and I feel like we won't really get a film like No Time to Die within the James Bond franchise, maybe again, or at least not for a very long time. Now, my runner-up is Casino Royale, and when I first watched No Time to Die, I actually put it above Casino, but over time I have kind of brought it down. And the main reason for that is because I do feel like No Time to Die is a lot, particularly on the first viewing. I have seen No Time to Die twice now, and I enjoyed it a bit more on the second viewing, like more than I did the first time. But with Casino Royale, what I really like about it in comparison to No Time to Die, and the reason why I have it above it, is because Casino Royale has a really great blend of quiet and loud. Whereas I feel like No Time to Die is pretty loud the entire way through, which isn't a bad thing, it's just a personal taste. And I feel like with Casino Royale, the blend between kind of the quiet scenes in the casino where we're just watching Bond and Le Chiffre just battle it out over a casino table, over a poker table, is equally as exciting and equally as invigorating as watching him in a fight sequence. And I feel like that is what Casino Royale absolutely nails. Also, this being Daniel Craig's first film and him kind of doing the closest we've got so far to a James Bond origin story within the film series, I think he does it really well. Obviously, we get to see him earn his 00 status at the beginning of the film, which is a really cool sequence, and that then leads into our title sequence, which has one of my favourite Bond tracks of all time, which is You Know My Name. I think that song, by Chris Cornell is just amazing. It slaps. It's really great. And that kind of sets the tone and the vibe, I think, for the movie really, really well. And that's when we're introduced to Le Chiffre, obviously played by Mads Mikkelsen, who's one of the best Bond villains. He's just really, really good because he's not this maniacal, over-the-top villain who wants to destroy the world and kill everything. He's not like that. He's literally just this kind of money launderer, kind of weapons dealer kind of guy, shady underworld sort of character who just owes people a lot of money. And he's purely there at this casino in Monte Carlo to just get money so he can pay back his debts. And I think that's just a really interesting villain for Bond because we're so used to these kind of world leaders and these kind of tyrannical characters who want to take over the world or start a new world order and stuff like that. But it's not like that with Le Chiffre. He's not after that. He just wants the money so he can basically get out of the shit himself. And I think that's a really compelling character because in a way that makes him equally as dangerous as any other villain that he's faced because he has got personal stakes within this. If he doesn't succeed, he's going to die. So again, that makes him equally as formidable and dangerous in this film as any other film within Daniel Craig's tenure. And I just really enjoyed that. And obviously Mads Mikkelsen is an incredible actor and he does a great job in this movie. Also, I think, the action sequences that we do get, even though there aren't too many in this film, are really exciting. The parkour sequence at the beginning, which of course everyone talks about, is fantastic. I can't really say much that hasn't already been said about that sequence. It's just really fun and exciting and cool to see these characters just flip and jump all over the place. But I also really like the fight sequence towards the end of the film where Bond is kind of going through that sinking building when we get the death of Vesper, played by Eva Green. Really great action sequence there. It's really well shot, it's really well edited, it's really well paced, and I just think that sequence just feels really exciting. It's a great little ending piece for the end of the film. But overall, Casino Royale, I think it just nails it. I think it's really solid, it's a really great film, and again, it has the perfect blend of really great character moments, really great sort of suspenseful sequences, but also really good action when it needs to have it as well, and an incredible song to boot. So I think Casino Royale, it is a favourite for a lot of people, and I completely understand why. However, my personal favourite film in the series, not only of Daniel Craig's era, but also just of James Bond in general, is Skyfall. I did for a long time actually have Casino Royale above Skyfall, but upon rewatch, Skyfall just completely hit with me. I loved Skyfall. I think that this film, it does the best of everything. It's a great blend of kind of classic Bond cliches, but still modernizing them, with also Daniel Craig's modern kind of take on Bond. It's the perfect blend of everything, and I think it's the one Bond movie that I think every Bond fan unanimously will agree is good. I think everyone is on board with Skyfall, and I think Sam Mendes being brought on as the director, he does a fantastic job kind of really setting the mood and the style and the tone for this film. It's such a slick and classic and beautiful looking film, obviously with help with Roger Deakins doing the cinematography. He just absolutely knocks it out of the park in this film. You know, this is by far the best looking James Bond film. I think this is the film, maybe, I don't know, I was going to say this is maybe Daniel Craig's best, but it could be, I think maybe he could be No Time to Die now. But he's still fantastic in this nonetheless. Judi Dench as M in this film is amazing. I mean, I really like her in Casino Royale and Quantum, but she doesn't have a particularly extensive role. She's just kind of this fun presence to have. Whereas in this, she actually has a role to play in the story, and she actually has a really compelling character within it. And I think that Judi Dench, obviously being Judi Dench, is amazing in it. And also the action within it is really exciting. Obviously the sort of London tube sequence is great. And also, I really love the ending action sequence in the house. It's very different because it's not the sort of typical action sequence you get. It's not particularly big. It's basically Home Alone, but it's quite good. Or to give it a more modern kind of one, it's a bit more like Rambo Last Blood. Like, there's a lot of really great moments within that. And also, the villain, obviously played by Javier Bardem, is just unstoppable. He's great. I love Silver. I think he's so interesting to watch. You can't kind of take your eyes off of him. And, you know, that one-shot take where he's walking towards Bond and just kind of monologuing is great. And I love his backstory as well. You know, the fact that he was a disgraced agent from M. I think that's really cool idea. I wish we honestly would have got a little bit more about that, like maybe like a flashback or something, because I think that's a really interesting element to explore with his character. Also, the Bond song in this, obviously Skyfall by Adele, is just euphoric. It's incredible. I love that song so much. And I think it's just like the actual opening title sequence of Skyfall just really gets you into the film. And I just feel like Skyfall, it just nails absolutely everything it tries to do. And again, I don't think I have a complaint with Skyfall. I think it's such a entertaining, great film that is the perfect blend for every Bond fan. And I feel like Skyfall, it's just one of those films that I think anyone can get behind. You know, even if you're not a James Bond fan, I think you can watch Skyfall and appreciate it and enjoy it for what it is. Even if you never watch any other Bond films, even if you don't plan to, if you watch Skyfall, I think anyone will enjoy it. So I love Skyfall. I think it's such a fantastic film, and it's definitely the Bond film that if I had to only own one Bond movie in my collection, it would be Skyfall. And it's the one that I always think about the most. It's the one I go back to the most. And I just think it's such a great achievement within the Bond franchise. So there you have it. There's my ranking of all 5 Daniel Craig James Bond films. Make sure to let me know your own list in the comment section down below. What is your opinion on him as James Bond? And also, who would you like to see take on the role of James Bond next? Make sure you let me know all your Bond thoughts in the comment section down below. And if you want to see more content like this, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any uploads from me. And hope to see you guys again next time.